Welcome to Crossroads. The Chinese Communist Party is claiming it's made new breakthroughs in fusion energy. Now, these reactors, they're envisioned as the kind of next generation of nuclear technology. But at the same time, the new developments, they may not actually be what they seem. Popular Mechanics says this. It said China joined the quest for an enormous internationally cooperative nuclear fusion reactor in 2023. And it says that now they've reached a milestone by generating its magnetic field for the first time, a field that is entirely new in its design. Now notice that this so-called artificial sun reactor, which is what they typically call, of course, fusion energy. This is the Huanliu 3, HL3, is a tokamak run by 17 collaborating labs and facilities around the world. But the much ballyhooed quest to make energy using these huge reactors still has a decade or more to go, with a lot of misinformation in the mix. Now note that while the HL3 puts China in the group of forerunners in nuclear fusion research, this is not nuclear fission, which of course current nuclear technology is based on. And note this reactor is not the largest by far, and this milestone is only for its own timeline. And note this reactor is not close to operating consistently or producing energy that compares to the vast amounts of energy that it and other similar reactors known as tokamaks are required to operate. So what does it mean? It says for a world-class artificial sun reactor like this to establish its own novel magnetic field design, it says that, well, it's a big milestone within the field of tokamak research, as the magnetic field is what actually contains the superheated fusion-generating plasma. Because plasma reaches 1,000,000 degrees, it cannot make contact with any other material, or it will both instantly cool down out of energy range and also damage or destroy whatever part it touches. Now note that as such, a successful magnetic field is the only thing, that they claim at least, that will ever allow a tokamak to contain the plasma and keep it hot enough to make net energy. Now, briefly on this, I've actually done a lot of research into fusion energy in the past. I've spoken with people who work on it. The problem you have with fusion energy, typically, is that they can't contain it. What it does essentially is it creates a kind of, they call them stars in a jar, an artificial sun, so to speak. It gets bright, it glows, and then it destroys the container. And the problem you have with this is that every time it destroys the container, well, you lose your investment. You have to rebuild whatever parts were destroyed. And so not only is it kind of experimental and theoretical if it can even possibly work, but also extremely expensive because, again, every time you turn it on, it destroys something. Now, on this, the big issue they have is they cannot contain it. So the theory here is that if they can make a magnetic field that can contain it, and then hypothetically it doesn't touch any kind of actual component, then they can hypothetically harness that through the magnetic field somehow. The problem they have with the current magnetic field technology that they can actually generate to an extent now is that there's like dips in it. It's not an even magnetic field, and it, of course, as soon as you turn it on, it starts causing disruptions within that. And so it's a very expensive, very theoretical type of energy. Now, with that said, even though it's experimental and kind of theoretical at the time, if a country were to actually successfully develop fusion energy and actually make it work, this would give them a large strategic edge on global energy control. And this is kind of starting a new race to develop it. One of the reasons why you see China on this, one of the reasons you see actually the United States on it, is because whoever gets it first is going to dominate the global energy market. And whoever doesn't do it, they're going to fall behind. This is deemed as one of the kind of core technologies of the future. And whoever gets it first is going to own it. Now, the Diplomat says that in April 2024, China released the draft of its amended atomic energy law nearly 7 years after initial discussions began. It says the law will serve as the guiding document for the regulation of nuclear power, including research and development of the nascent nuclear fusion industry. And notes in the past year, the Chinese government included nuclear fusion development in its annual government work reports for the first time. And it says as well that Zhang Jianhua, head of the Chinese Energy Administration, also called for establishing a, quote, forward-looking strategy for China's nuclear fusion industry. And notes as well, though, that China is not alone in its growing interest in nuclear fusion. At the 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, former U.S. climate envoy John Kerry unveiled a new international partnership initiative on nuclear fusion involving 35 country partners. Although specific details about the partnership have yet to be disclosed, we don't actually know the details on it. It says this groundbreaking initiative represents the first time that nuclear fusion, once considered in the realm of science fiction, has been presented as a viable climate solution at the UN Climate Change Conference. It notes as well that a flurry of nuclear fusion legislation has mushroomed globally in the past few years, and within the United States, the Department of Energy set out a 10-year plan in 2022, which includes an initiative that coordinates all fusion-related work under a single program to streamline fusion research, development, and demonstration activities. Notice as well that data from the International Atomic Energy Agency indicates that there are 96 nuclear fusion pilot projects worldwide, with an additional 11 under construction and 29 planned. And notice as well that most of them emerged just in the last 2 years. And so in other words, internationally, at government levels, nuclear fusion is being pushed as kind of a global strategic initiative. And you have, of course, the Chinese Communist Party working on one major side of that, and you have the United States working on the other major side of it. A few key points with nuclear fusion. It's regarded as basically completely clean. It's also, even though it's nuclear, it doesn't have radiation, or at least so little that you could technically, and I don't know the current regulations, but even technically develop it in your own house because it's regarded as that safe. And so this kind of represents nuclear energy, but on a safe level, relatively speaking. And currently China is actually outspending the United States in the race to develop this energy. But some of the money, interestingly, is coming from an unlikely source, a company notably tied with a popular Chinese video game. We'll be talking more about this when we come back from a quick break.
Experts agree, one of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. The Chinese Communist Party is claiming it's made breakthroughs in developing fusion energy. Now, the reactors, fusion energy, they're envisioned as the next generation of nuclear technology. And China currently is outspending the United States in this race to develop it. But interestingly, some of the money in China is coming from an unlikely source, a company tied in with a popular Chinese video game. Windows Central says a couple of years ago, Daniel Ahmad of Nico Partners reported that MiHoYo of Genshin Impact, one of the biggest video games around, had invested $65 million into the Ultimate Clean Energy project, and now the investment has begun bearing fruit. And it's that Genshin Impact is one of the most popular PC games in the entire world. A free-to-play gacha game, players can collect dozens of anime-style heroes, earning in-game currency by playing or purchasing for chances to unlock them. And notes that Genshin Impact's popularity stems from its live service, which is frequently updated with large, high-quality story content patches on top of some playable areas being made in it as well. Similar to titles like World of Warcraft and the like. But it says, unlike World of Warcraft, though, Genshin Impact is using some of its profits to fund nuclear fusion technology. And so this Chinese video game, money from it, people in the United States, your kids playing it, they're helping finance, it seems, some of the money, of course, going to these fusion energy projects in China. Now, there's something else really important with this. Fusion energy, it also ties into having a potential economy tied in with the moon. And I know this sounds like science fiction. I mean, look, even fusion energy used to be kind of seen as science fiction. But the Chinese Communist Party is trying to control what they call the cis-lunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon. And with that, of course, they're looking to build a moon base, especially now that they claim at least that they found evidence of water on the moon. And also because, well, the moon is believed to be abundant with helium-3. That's a material that you would need for fusion reactors. And so if a country, for example, were to actually succeed in developing fusion energy and making it viable and having it work, you would need to have helium-3. And the moon is believed to be one of the major sources of helium-3. If they were to, of course, establish this, it would mean that they would have a functioning Earth-Moon economy, and notably the ability to control that region as well and finance it. The Chinese Communist Party, look, for years, they've been talking about plans to mine the moon. And of course, a lot of this discussion came about even before nuclear fusion was even seen as a viable kind of future energy. But if you were to have a functioning mining operation on the moon, that would of course give some reason to have a moon base there and have them actually serve a function other than just research. It would mean that you'd be developing actual mining activities that you could use both for helium-3 and for notably water if they do in fact find it there in large quantities. And also the capability of having operations even beyond the moon, because of course if they do find water, well, they can use water for hydrogen energy, or if they hypothetically do work on fusion energy, they could have of course a fusion-based kind of energy program that could do operations even to Mars or beyond. Now, in other news, the Biden administration, they've allegedly revised their strategy on global nuclear threats. Now, Voice of America says that White House officials on Wednesday appear to downplay Beijing's sentiment that it is, quote, seriously concerned after a report alleged the United States recently approved a secret plan to shift some of the focus of its nuclear strategy away from Russia to deal with Beijing, the CCP's nuclear weapons buildup. Now, it notes that National Security Council spokesman Sean Savit told Voice of America in response to emailed questions, quote, the guidance issued earlier this year is not a response to any single entity, country, nor threat, but added, we have repeatedly voiced concerns about the advancing nuclear arsenals of Russia, China, and North Korea. The most recent guidance, it says, builds on what was issued by previous administrations. There's far more continuity than change, he said. But it notes as well, the report said the document, updated every 4 years, reorients U.S. nuclear deterrent strategy to deal with China's massive expansion of its nuclear arsenal. And the new U.S. nuclear strategy, it says, also orders U.S. forces to prepare for the possibility of coordinated nuclear challenges from China, Russia, and North Korea, according to the report. And this is important. Now, it notes that for decades, U.S. nuclear policy has been primarily focused on Russia, right? The old Soviet Union and the nuclear threat, the only other country with comparable nuclear weapons capabilities. But U.S. officials have increasingly warned that China's nuclear buildup under Xi Jinping is proceeding faster than previously expected. In an unclassified document released late last year, it says, the Pentagon estimated that the Chinese military had more than 500 operational warheads in its arsenal and will have more than 1,000 warheads by 2030. Now, this is in the backdrop of the Chinese Communist Party stopping talks on nuclear nonproliferation. They don't want to have talks and discussions with the United States around getting rid of nuclear weapons. Even then, of course, some people would point to the New START treaty signed under the Obama administration between the U.S. and Russia, where the two countries did agree to start getting rid of their nuclear arsenal. It turned out Russia there were some technicalities and loopholes in that. They can get rid of the old arsenal, but they were building new types of nuclear weapons. And so as the United States has been getting rid of its nuclear arsenal, other countries, including Russia, but especially the Chinese Communist Party, have been rapidly expanding theirs. Not to mention, rising nuclear powers like, of course, North Korea. And this is also in context of the CCP and the whole new axis of powers making increased nuclear threats against other countries. Notably, for example, the Chinese Communist Party and Russia have, over the last couple years, been repeatedly making nuclear threats against Europe, against South Korea, against even Taiwan, against even the United States. And, with all this, the recent incursion of the Chinese Communist Party and Russia sending bombers into the Alaskan air defense zone kind of brought that home for the United States. Now, this was also explained in an August 1st speech at CSIS from Vipin Narang, Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy. Let me show you this. Watch.
The key message I'd like to leave you with today is sobering but necessary. While the administration has long sought to strike a balance between deterrence and arms control, we now find ourselves in nothing short of a new nuclear age. An unprecedented mix of multiple revisionist nuclear challengers who are uninterested in arms control or risk reduction efforts, each rapidly modernizing and expanding their nuclear arsenals, and openly threatening to employ nuclear weapons to achieve their aims.
And he notes something else, that these actions of Russia, but also China especially, are forcing the United States to look for other options on how to, kind of push back. Watch.
First, we must continue to field a modern nuclear deterrent with the numbers and the attributes necessary to deter strategic attack, assure our allies and partners, and meet our objectives if deterrence fails. Our current nuclear force posture and planned modernization program is necessary, but may well be insufficient in the coming years to support this need. Second, we must continue to strengthen our network of allies and partners and our extended deterrence efforts in NATO and the Indo-Pacific, because these are our asymmetric advantage over our adversaries. And third, we must invest in building the next generation of talent, the next generation of leaders to guide our strategic thinking and shape our future infrastructure and capabilities in this era of competition. Let me be clear, competition is not a foregone conclusion. If our adversaries make different choices, so will we. But so far, they have not and show no interest in doing so. So if our adversaries continue down their current paths, the United States, alongside our allies and partners, is ready, willing, and able to confront the challenges of a new nuclear age.
So, in other words, it sounds a bit like the return of a Cold War type situation of nuclear buildup and nuclear threats. It also mentions threats from Russia, North Korea, and the Chinese Communist Party, but noting in particular that in 2021, the Chinese Communist Party was found to be significantly increasing its nuclear weapons programs. Now, this is important because the Chinese Communist Party doesn't necessarily let in, U.S. observers to actually get a real clear view of what they're developing. For them, a lot of this is being done in secret. And notably as well, the United States, a lot of our nuclear arsenal, yes, we have like the Doomsday subs and the Doomsday planes, which maintain a kind of cloaked nature, right? They maintain a relatively hidden nature. A lot of our other nuclear weapons are in silos that are over-targeted. They know where they are. The Chinese Communist Party, notably, they actually took on some programs the U.S. was going to develop but never did, like the Midget Man program, for example. And the idea is having miniaturized nukes. And you can move them in and out of underground bases. You can hide them in shipping containers. In fact, the CCP has actually demonstrated things that look like shipping containers, and they lift up in their nuclear launch vehicles. Given that nature, the CCP has taken steps to conceal its nuclear weapons, whereas the United States has mostly maintained its existing arsenal. It is an aging arsenal. We're not really pushing to develop, much with it. And we also haven't really advanced things in terms of making things that can be hidden in the case of a war, which does put us in a pretty serious area of threat when it comes to nuclear weapons. Because remember, Part of the whole nuclear defense treaty and different programs with this is the threat of mutually assured destruction, as terrible as that sounds. But the idea is it's not worth ever using nuclear weapons because the retaliation would destroy you as well. Nobody dares use them because of that. And so if the United States were to lose its side of it, there would be nothing to stop other countries from using them. And that's, of course, the major concern when it comes to, the end of nuclear nonproliferation discussions between the U.S. and China, and also highlights why it's so important the U.S. now is focusing on China and its kind of veiled nuclear programs amidst all of this. In other news, the United States and its allies are now pushing back a lot more strongly against the CCP, as the Chinese regime puts its weight behind Russia and other brewing global conflicts. And amidst this, it seems the CCP is deciding to double down instead of backing off. Now, I'll be talking about this more only on epochtv.com. So if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble, there's a link in the description below. Click on that. You'll get access to the rest of this episode, as well as our whole library of shows and our hard-hitting documentaries on issues that really matter, like the Chinese Communist Party's 100-year plan to defeat the United States. The CCP is one of the biggest threats to America. They're using things like propaganda, video games, entertainment, movies, culture to subvert and influence the next generation. This unrestricted war against our country is one of the scariest but least understood issues of our time because it's not tangible. It's being done through soft power and ideological subversion. Now, I spent over a decade investigating the CCP's subversion, and it's such an important issue that I made a documentary called The Final War. It exposes this 100-year plot of the CCP to try to take down America. Now, if you'd like to find out more about what the CCP is plotting against this country, watch The Final War. You can find the link in the description below, and I'll show you all the trailer before we go exclusively to epochtv.com for the rest of this episode. I'll see you there.
The greatest threat facing the United States is the CCP.
The Epoch Times investigation team had studied the CCP for years, but what we uncovered was yielding evidence beyond our imagination.
With Chairman Mao, with the Prime Minister, our talks have been characterized by frankness.
The Clinton administration said, "Oh, don't worry about it. This will be a poison pill for China."
China's strategic goal is to make sure that the U.S. has 4 enemies, and one of them must be a terrorist group.
We are giving of our life's blood so that the Chinese Communist Party can survive and thrive.